Hi everyone, Janie here. Welcome back to Michael Glassman, my friend and award-winning landscape designer.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here again.
We are here for another episode of our Solving Problems in the Landscape series. So in this series, Michael and I are going through any problems that you might find in your landscape and how to deal with them. Whether it's being too hot, having too much shade, all those things, having pests in the garden. And today we're talking about something that I am going to admit I know nothing about, and everything I know I've learned from you.
Thank you.
And that is hardscaping. So I do want to say, if you've missed any of our previous episodes on the Solving Problem in the Landscape series, check out the playlist. I'm going to link it in the description down below. But today, I want to know, give me a lesson
on hardscape. Yeah.
What do I need to know about hardscaping?
Okay, so when I talk about hardscaping, I divide it up into function and aesthetics.
Yeah.
Function is, how does it work? Outdoor overheads, patios, decks, walkways. That's function. How do you use a space so it's a functional environment?
Right.
And then with that, we have aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sure, you can have lots of hardscape, but unless you soften it with planting.
Make it pretty.
Yeah, it looks like a big parking lot, and who wants that?
Right.
So all of the people that are so into planting, that's incredible. That's part of the solution. It's like you have a puzzle. Well, part of the puzzle is the softscape.
Yeah.
And when people talk about hardscape, it's adjunct to that is the softscape. So hardscape is walks, decks, patios, anything that's a hard nature. Softscape is plant materials, rock, mulch, all of that.
Okay.
And you've got it cornered for all the softscape.
I've got softscape done.
Yeah.
I can do that with my eyes closed.
Exactly.
It's the hardscape.
It's the hardscape.
And you don't even realize you need hardscape until it gets brought to your attention.
Right.
And you think, oh yeah, that would be really nice to have a walkway there.
Exactly.
My orchard garden.
Yeah, I need to get to my plants. So what I try to explain to people, and they say, well, what do you mean by that? Is think of it in terms of our own body.
Okay.
We have a skeletal structure.
Okay.
That's what holds the body together.
Yes.
Now, the flesh and the hair and the eyebrows and all of the clothing, that's all the aesthetics. But you can have hair and skin, but if you don't have a skeleton, the whole thing just falls to the ground.
Okay.
That's
Got it.
the same thing with the landscape. You need to think in terms of, number one, how am I going to use the space?
Right.
What do I want to use the space for?
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be usable so that I'm not falling on my face? I have like in your orchard garden, I want to get to it.
I want to get to the plants.
Yeah, I want to bring a wheelbarrow through. Am I going to go right through the center of the plant and then smash it? No, we need a walkway. So what I try to explain to people is think in terms of function and aesthetics. And when we're talking function, think about structure.
Okay.
Okay, and I've divided it up into different areas. And the first area we're going to talk about is separating modes of transportation.
Yes, and I've heard you talk about this before. And this is really, really interesting and something that I don't think a lot of us really think about it, right?
And what people say, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Separate. We'll take a perfect example would be a driveway in a front yard.
Mm-hmm.
Cars need a driveway.
Right.
You pull up the driveway, you go into the garage. Hopefully you do go in the garage, or you even park on the driveway. But that's for a car.
Yeah.
And then we're people. We should be able to have, we're a pedestrian. We should be able to have a separate front walkway, if possible.
Okay.
If not, that's okay.
Yeah.
But at least an area to be able to enter into the house without walking on the driveway in between cars. Because here's the problem. A lot of times people don't pull in their driveway. Mm-hmm. They park on the driveway. It's now a rainy day, and you've got maybe a foot between the cars, and you're trying to snake in between to get to the front door.
Yep.
Let alone think about kids that like to play on a driveway. Even if people are parked in the garage and they're not watching what they're doing, they roll up the garage door and they start backing up and someone's there.
Right.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
So what I try to tell people is driveways are for cars, walkways are for people. And if you're going to design a front walkway, then do it ample enough space that two people can walk next to each other without having to walk like single file.
Yeah.
So a walkway should be a minimum of 5 feet wide.
5 feet.
Yeah, 4 to 5 feet.
Oh.
I'll get away with 4, but I
Okay.
like it at least 5. I don't even mind 8 feet.
Oh, wow.
And it doesn't have to be this straight shot that looks like a big tongue coming
Yeah.
out of someone's mouth.
Yeah.
It can be meandering, it can be staggered, but you make it big enough so that you basically make a statement, because you're asking people to come to your house, hopefully.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
And so you want to give them enough room that they can be able to walk. And then this is where the gardener comes in, and this is where the DIY and the designer. The gardener says, okay, great, I've got a 4 or 5 foot wide walkway.
Yeah.
But it's boring.
Yeah.
It just looks like this big stretch of concrete or tile or brick or anything. So where the gardener comes in is, I'm going to soften it down. I'm going to put ground covers that kind of grow amongst it. If you're in a climate where you don't have 105 during the summer, you might even do stepping pads, big pads, and use creeping thyme, Corsican mint in between. That's where the gardener comes in.
Beautiful.
Any way that the gardener can soften that down makes it, you've got the function, but you've also got the aesthetics.
You got the bones and you got the skin.
You got
Like
the
you
skin,
said.
exactly. So that would be a really important thing. And then now if you say, well, what about the DIY? Oh, this is perfect. Like what you and Jason did. You didn't, right. You decided for your walkways, you did the metal edging and the decomposed granite.
Well, I didn't. That was your idea.
Well, but
and I love it. And
yes.
we were able to do it relatively DIY.
Exactly,
Yeah.
DIY. Interlocking pavers is
yeah.
something that a homeowner, and we'll show some pictures of that a homeowner can do themselves.
Yeah.
Throughout Europe, you go and people have these wonderful gravel walkways and patios.
Yeah.
A DIY can do that. They can dig that out. They can put some edging. I mean, I went to a job recently which I love, they used little headstone rock. It's a little moss rock the size of the head, and they use that as their border, and then they just filled in with gravel. It was delightful.
Beautiful.
So that's what a DIY can do.
Beautiful.
And then the last person would be the designer myself, and yes, I use it all. I would use the plants to soften it down. I would definitely want my homeowner to maybe do some of the work to cut the cost.
Yeah.
And then, but I might think about more expensive things, like in this yard, we use porcelain tile.
Which is stunning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's more costly. So that's number one in terms of problem solving, separating modes of transportation.
Separating modes of transportation. Would that even extend to like the backyard and stuff like that?
Absolutely. You need to think in terms of, and this is something that occasionally my clients will bring up to me because I forget about it, is like, we'll do a big raised patio.
Yeah.
And they'll go, well, that's great, but how am I going to, and I do have a grass area, how am I going to get my mower over there? Am I going to throw it over? No. So again, separating the modes, you have to have a way to be able to bring the mower in, whether it be DG, whether it be concrete. Another thing, we got garbage cans. Everyone's got garbage cans.
Yeah.
How you need a place to put them, and B, a way to get them out. You're not going to hoist them on your back like a Sherpa and walk them outside.
Yeah.
So so again, separating modes of transportation, a way to be able to get wheelbarrows, a way to get garbage cans, a way to get a lawnmower. Also, if you're doing a big vegetable garden and you want to have mulch delivered or new soil, what, you're going to put it over the brand new patio?
Right.
So absolutely, I'm so glad you mentioned that, separating your modes of transportation in a backyard, because there's so many functional things that need a way to get in and out.
Interesting. Okay, so step one in thinking about your hardscape, separating your modes of transportation. That's
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, Michael, so what's step two?
Step two is elevation changes.
Okay.
And that's a very hard one. That's a very big one.
Yeah.
And let me start out by saying, again, we're talking function.
Yeah.
Steps are not our friend.
No.
We think they are. We think they're dramatic. It looks great in photos and everything. But you think about it. If you have to open a door and you have to fall out onto a set of steps or a little teeny landing and then get out, you can trip, you can fall. I cannot tell you how many clients tell me, I've had a broken hip, I've had a broken leg, babies falling out of doors.
Yeah.
I mean, so anytime you've got a raised foundation,
Right.
it is really important to think about maybe elevating a terrace or a deck like we over here,
Yeah.
so that you open the door and you come out. I mean, let's face it, we're all getting older.
Yeah.
If you're in a walker, a wheelchair, even if you're in a baby and you're crawling,
Yeah.
you want to think in terms of, if that door opens, do you want someone tumbling out the door?
Yeah.
Well, if it's elevated, and if you're not gonna do a whole big elevated patio, do at least a terrace big enough, 4 or 5 feet wide, so that when you open the door, you feel comfortable walking out before you come down the steps.
Yeah, I think it kind of elevates the look. When you see a house, which my front door has this, but it's immediately steps and it goes straight down, I just think that it's kind of like you say, path of least resistance. Right?
People use the path of least resistance, and that's a really important thing, because night, I mean, people do use their yard at night. People do come and visit you at night.
Yeah.
So if you're having to open up a door and fall down steps, or you're not navigating well, if it's a big open area and it's level, you're not going to fall down and break your neck.
Yeah.
And railings.
Yeah.
I mean, again, if
look
you're
at
gonna,
this gorgeous railing.
if you're going to elevate a patio,
Yeah.
you got to think about, all right, and a lot of people say, I like that openness. Well, that's great, but if you're having a party, and if someone just happens to drink a little too much,
yeah.
and they're backing up, the last thing you want them to do is fall off the end of the raised patio or the deck.
Yeah.
So you have to think about railings. Railings can be something like this that are see-through.
Yeah.
It can be done in cable. It can be done in mesh. They're all different kinds of railings, but you want to think in terms of seat wall. If you didn't want to do a railing, you could do a seat wall, and that way, again, someone doesn't just sit there and fall off. And the seat wall doesn't have a back; it's just the seat wall.
Yeah.
So it's a very important thing to start thinking about elevation changes. And we were talking earlier, and you mentioned it a little earlier, the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
When you're planning hardscape and you're planning elevation changes, the thing that you have to think about is, and I run into this a lot of times when my clients say to me, oh, we're going to put the outdoor kitchen in the back area. In fact, recently I had that. And in fact, we're doing plant placement for them this week. And they had these gazebos in the back that were probably 85 feet from the house.
Yeah.
And they were originally planning to put the outdoor kitchen.
Right.
And I said, can I be honest with you? And they said, that's why you're here. I said, you will never use it. I said, can you imagine, you come out of the house, it's a raised foundation, you step out there, you come down 3 steps, you go 85 feet out there carrying burgers. Or
You're never going to use it.
No.
You're never going to use it.
No.
Yeah.
So what we wound up doing was, we wound up enlarging their area close to the house, putting their outdoor kitchen there, and they've already told me it's not even done and they're using it all the time.
That's amazing.
So again, the path of least resistance. Now, you're saying to me, okay, what does the gardener have to do with it? One of the ways that you can think about doing is accenting, so that there are areas of that raised patio that you're never going to have sitting there.
Yeah.
Against a wall, no one's going to sit. You're not going to tie them against the wall.
Right, right.
So that is a perfect area to do a whole series of big, large, oversized pots.
Oh, yeah.
So you soften it down. So if you didn't want to pay to have a deck or a raised patio up against a house, which you'd have to seal the foundation.
Yeah.
You'd have to seal the walls. You have to keep the patio a little away from it so it doesn't rot out.
Right.
You could put a big, long trough. Plants there.
You've done that before in one of your Megan's house.
Yes, I did. Yes,
See
I
if I
did.
can find a picture for it.
Yes, I
did.
did.
It was beautiful.
And it was beautiful, and it solved the problem. We
Yeah.
have this big planter. It's away from the house.
Yeah.
We have the drainage still, so they didn't have to worry about any rot. That's what the gardener would do. Plant plants there.
Love
Plus,
it.
it looks good. You don't just have hardscape against hardscape. You
Yeah.
have softening.
Yes. Like you said, it's not just a parking lot. It's
If you're doing a railing, now in this case we have a railing that's open because it's right at cantilevers over the swimming pool. But can you imagine if that wasn't a swimming pool, to have done some planting area and having jasmine, climbing roses, creeping fig growing all over there?
Wouldn't that be beautiful?
Oh my God! In Italy, they do big hanging baskets, or they do window baskets on their balconies, and like the trailing geraniums hang down in the bougainvillea.
Yeah.
So again, that would be what the gardener would think about.
Okay. Now, what about the DIYer?
The DIYer, yes, building a deck is easier. Is a homeowner could do that, but again, what Jason and you did because of cost, you did the prefab concrete pavers with the DG in between.
Yes.
That was a lot less expensive than doing the porcelain
Yeah.
or even doing this deck.
Yeah.
Building a deck, if a homeowner builds a deck and stains it themselves.
Yeah.
Now, if you said what's underneath there is drain lines so that if any water gets underneath there, it's drained out there.
Yeah.
There's landscape fabric and then there's rocks so
Okay.
that you're not going to get weeds coming through there. But a homeowner, a DIY, can build a deck, can do pavers. Pavers would be great, can raise areas. Again, you can use concrete block, build it up with road base, put even decomposed granite, compact it down so that the whole area can be raised. That is something the DIY can do and save yourself 60% of the cost.
A bunch of money. Yeah, a bunch of, because we actually had someone come and give us a quote for a raised concrete, and we thought, oh, there's got to be a way we could do that cheaper.
Exactly. So what I'm trying to explain to people is that, yeah, sure, you could, the sky's the limit. You can do anything. This is gorgeous. The TimberTech is absolutely magnificent,
Yeah.
but it's expensive. So you don't have to go, well, I can't afford it, I can't do anything.
Right. Yeah, that's
So-
not the goal of this series. The goal is to
No.
get you guys thinking about ways to solve issues, like having steps that come right outside your door.
Right.
How's a way that you can do it to make it a little bit easier, a little easier of a pill to swallow?
And if you are going to, and I'll be real honest, if you cannot raise up, you can't do the landings, then at least put railings on those steps.
Yeah,
Because you
yeah.
think about it, if someone is older or someone is infirmed or anyone, if you open the door and you can grab onto a railing, that's what this is about.
Yeah.
To get into the pool so that you're not just standing there trying to walk in the steps. It's a beautiful contemporary railing
Yeah.
that you can hang onto and go into the pool.
It's going to make all the difference.
It makes all the difference. And there's so many different styles of railing that are artistic and fun. So again, thinking in terms of cost is important. How can I soften things down? How can I get the biggest bang for my buck?
Yeah.
But so all those elements come into play.
Love it. Number 3.
Number 3. 3 is 2 parts.
Okay.
Okay. One is, and this is very simple, mixed materials.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So often, and maybe, and again, the gardener, not so much, but the DIYer will understand this. If you've got an existing house,
Yeah.
Let's talk about the interior, and you can't afford to make it bigger,
Right.
but you want it to appear bigger.
Yes.
And in one room, you have carpet. Another room, you have a wood floor. Another room, you have linoleum.
I get where you're going,
Right.
and I love it. Yeah.
And so you've got all this, it's a patchwork.
Yeah.
And everything looks small.
Yes.
But if you take it all out and you unify it all with hardwood floor,
Mm-hmm.
you haven't changed one wall, but you stand there and everything flows together, it suddenly looks bigger.
It looks incredible.
Exactly. It's the same thing in landscaping.
Yeah,
If
love
you've
it.
got a little brick walkway here and an aggregate piece of patio here, the befores on this place, that's what it looked like.
Okay.
It was so many different materials and a little piece of wood in here. When it becomes all these mixed materials, that doesn't mean it all has to be exactly the same. In this case, we have decking and we have the porcelain tile and of course we have the wood accents.
Right.
But if you keep it to maybe 1 or 2 or 3 materials,
Yeah.
it's not going to look like this hodgepodge patchwork quilt.
Yeah.
And when you're designing, that's the important thing, and that's the whole thing about Hardscape. If you design your skeleton, your structure, then you're not worrying about, okay, you want to do this later, but it's like it looks like you just dropped it out of the sky and it makes right.
Yeah,
If
it doesn't fit. Yeah.
Exactly. Even if we can't do it now, but you've prepared for it and you've saved enough to have like tile.
Yeah.
So maybe you can't afford to do all the tiling, but you bought the tile, it's sitting in storage.
Yeah.
When you go ahead a year or 2 later, they haven't run out of the stock.
Yeah.
So it's pulling things together so it all meshes.
Interesting. Okay, so just making it as cohesive as you would in a house.
Yes.
Which I completely get that concept because I agree that makes a huge difference. But I could see that in the yard.
In the yard, and we talk about it in every video that you and I do. Painting, staining the fences.
Yes.
By just unifying one thing, the color of the screens, whether they be the trim color, the house color, and everything, we now have cohesiveness. And it's so funny because when I do a consultation, that's so funny. We tell people and they do it. they fight with us, but they do it.
Yeah.
And then the first thing that they go, they'll call us and they'll go, oh, it looks amazing. It just looks
such a difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what a DIY can do.
I love it.
And then planting, again, cohesively, instead of having one of these and one of these and one of these and one of these.
Which I am very guilty of, by the way. And you have told me, like, Janey, add 3 more Miss Molly bushes.
Right. I love diversity,
Yeah.
but repeat it. It's like when you're painting a painting,
Yeah.
Yes, you can do a dot of color, dot of here, but if you do a big swath of color, it stands out.
It looks incredible.
In this place, you can see, and again, we wanted softening, so we did the raised planters, which are great with the new planting. Otherwise, we would have just had a flat space of bark and one tree.
Interesting. Okay, I love it.
And then the last point when you're talking about materials is, this is one case where I will say bigger is better.
Yeah, bigger is better.
Bigger is better whenever possible. If you can make a space more hardscape to be able to use. There has never been a client that has ever said to me, we have too much patio. I've never heard someone say, we have too many walkways, we have too big a patio, we don't know what to do with it. It's just the opposite. People say, oh my God, I don't have enough room. I would love to have more people over. There's no place to put them.
That's so interesting that you're saying that, because that's a fear of mine, that I'm going to put too much hardscape in my garden. I think that that's the gardener in me speaking. I won't have enough gardening space, but you're right. When I put the pathway in my orchard garden, which took up a ton of gardening space, all of a sudden I used the space I had so much more. And the place that doesn't have access to pathways, I don't plant in that space.
Now I'm not going to amend it, but I am going to say, don't waste money and space on areas that you're never going to use.
Oh, yeah.
So, for example, exactly what you're saying. Pathways you're going to use. The main patio you're going to use. Maybe a secondary. But I run into people, they'll show me their initial plans and they'll ask me, what do I think? And I go, if I'm going to be real honest with you, I said, it's way too busy. I said, you got a patio out there. You got a sitting area out there. You got an area. I said, how many people live in this house? Oh, it's my husband and I and one child.
Yeah.
I said, who's going to use all these spaces? When you entertain, think about it. When you entertain, people like to be in one area, maybe a second area, but you're not going to put the people you like up here, the people you sort of like over there, and the people you hate, they're way back there. Having a small intimate area that's kind of a contemplative area, I love that.
Right.
But when you start wasting spaces because I might sit there one day. Once?
Yeah.
I'm going to do this here. And it's what we've talked about is the path of least resistance. Are you truly going to go out there? And how often are you going to use it?
Yeah.
If you're going to spend, if it's going to cost you $5,000, $10,000, is it going to be $5,000 to $10,000 worth of value, or are you going to put it out there? It looks pretty, and you never sit out there.
And you never touch it.
I would rather have a tree out there that you look at that gives you seasonal color. So that's why I said bigger is better in terms of how you function. But just having spaces for entertaining that you'll never use, it's a waste of time and money.
So use that time and money on the places that you actually have.
Exactly.
And make it bigger.
And make it
better.
And make
I
it better.
love that. I love that. So can you tell me what are a couple of your favorite hardscapes to use?
I love, I love natural stones.
Yeah.
I have to say I love brick. I love slate.
Yeah.
I love porcelain tile. It's
Gorgeous.
great. I love travertine. You know that.
Yes.
My own place is
Yep.
that. I love the decking. I like the wood. I will say the reason I like the timber tech, in today's world, because of fire, they're not allowing you to put plants 5 feet along the house.
Oh.
So and that's another thing, by having an elevated patio or a deck, that you're not worrying about. Having a planter, you can move it away during a fire.
Yeah.
But having planting along the house, they're not insuring people, so they're taking those away.
Yeah, something to think about.
Yeah, so and one of the reasons I use TimberTech is it's fireproof.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So I like the TimberTech. I love natural materials. Yeah. I also have to say, there's a contemporary side of me. I love poured concrete. I like regular poured concrete broken up with something or salted and everything.
Let me put a picture of this Mediterranean style house that Michael did.
Yes.
The poured concrete.
The poured concrete. Yeah,
oh,
that was
it's
beautiful.
so
that was
beautiful.
And Negan's, if you look, we broke it up with the synthetic lawn or black Mexican pebble, so it's not just monolith. It's funny because depending on where I'm at, what the house looks like, because if I'm at a very traditional Spanish-style California hacienda, I love terracotta tile.
Me too.
I love it. I
love
mean,
it.
I love it. So it's really hard for me to say. It's like I have so many plants that I love,
Yeah.
but I gear my styles to the style of the architecture
Yeah.
and the interior of the house.
Smart.
So it all ties together.
Super, super smart. So there you have it. Michael Glassman, landscape designer's recommendations for hardscapes in your landscape. There, we can solve these solutions, right? We gotta get the tips from the professional. So you kind of broke it up into 4 different things. What are those?
First one was separate the modes of transportation, whether
Yeah.
it's a front or a backyard.
Okay.
Number 2 was elevation changes.
Yes.
Steps are not our friends.
Right.
Bring up elevations, railings, keeping things so that people don't trip, break their neck and everything.
Yeah.
And then the third, which comprised like 2 parts, was mixing materials. Less materials used will make it feel bigger, more cohesive, will tie in with the interior and the exterior of the house.
Yeah.
And then bigger sometimes is better.
Bigger is better.
Bigger is better.
Bigger
but
is better.
don't waste, and the most important thing, and I said that in the very beginning, is think about function. How am I going to use the space? The path of least resistance is the most important thing because that's what we do the most.
Yeah.
The path of least resistance.
I love it. I love it. So again, I'm going to link our playlist in the description down below with all the other episodes that we've done. We have more to come, so stay tuned.
Yes.
Make sure you subscribe. Please like this video if you enjoyed that. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope you all have a chance to get in your garden today.
Perfect.